A video game that shows horses' ball shrinking in the cold. Who doesn't know Red Dead Redemption 2? I love video games, I love knowledge, and I love to make a connection between them. If you also like video games and you wanna understand something new and you wanna learn some lesson for the present and the future, I think you should watch this video. Today we will start from the realism of Red Dead Redemption 2, and we will see why wolves are not dangerous animals for humans. And then we will see a series of animals that exist in this world, like giant armadillos or giant lizards. And at the end we close up with a lesson, something that we can learn from this video game and the knowledge. Let's start our stroll. Red Dead Redemption 2 is famous for its realism. The famous case is the horse's ball shrinking in the cold, but there are other things, there are other features like the stains of blood in the beard of your character, or the body decomposition of corpses that gradually decompose with time, with the appearance of worms and animals that will eat the corpses. This game is also very good for the storyline and the immersive experience that provides you, and the non-linearity of the story, where basically every choice you make is gonna influence the outcome of the story and is gonna change how the story basically develops. I was playing one of the first missions of the game, and I came across to something. In the first mission you have to basically rescue a friend on top of a mountain during a snowstorm. On the way back, a pack of wolves attacks you. And I question myself if it's true that wolves are dangerous for humans, are aggressive to humans. Well, it turns out that wolves are actually not dangerous for humans, they tend to avoid humans. In fact, in North America there have been no cases in the history of humans killed by wolves, or even heavily injured. This is mainly because wolves are scared of us, they know we are dangerous, and in the majority of cases they won't attack us if they don't have any lack of food. The exception is wolves living in remote regions, like the Arctic wolves for example. They are not used to our presence, in that case they might be aggressive. But funny enough, Arthur Morgan, the main character of Red Dead Redemption 2, killed all the wolves in the Wild West. There are no more. For this reason, the scientists reintroduced the wolves in the ecosystem a few decades ago. And what happened was they find out an effect called Trophic Cascade. I will explain you. Basically, the reintroduction of the wolf, which is an apex predator in the chain, made an effect on the whole system that makes the entire system better. So basically what happened was the wolves, by being reintroduced, started to put pressure, for example, on the elk, the animal that actually eats grass. By putting pressure on this animal, the elk is eating less grass. The consequence is that now there is a plant, the willow, that is growing back again. It was disappearing from the ecosystem and now is growing back again. The scientists are actually debating about the Trophic Cascade effect. I think the main argument is that you don't just putting back the apex predator on the chain does not restore the ecosystem. And I think that's a fair point, because you can't expect to just reintroduce the animal and have the total change in like a total restore of the system. For example, there is beavers missing in the Yellowstone Park, where this experiment is conducted, and the beavers basically were making dams on the river, and by slowing down the river will make more of these plants grow. Now the beavers are not there anymore, so you can't restore the full ecosystem by just putting only the wolves, you should have also the beavers. But this doesn't mean that the reintroduction of an apex predator is actually helpful to the ecosystem. Let's explore now where wolves come from. from where the Canis lupus, or wolf, comes from. Let's take a time machine and let's travel in the past, in the Arctic region, 40 million years ago. What do you expect to find 40 million years ago in the Arctic region? You would expect a nice landscape, snow everywhere. You will be surprised. You're going to find a forest. A polar rainforest with redwood trees and cypress. And if we open Google Maps, because obviously we are going to have Google Maps, and in particular Google Earth, we will see that the Alps have not been formed. They are starting to forming. And India is just an island that is clashing with Asia, creating the Himalaya. This is the Eocene. 40 million years ago was the Eocene, was a period with very high concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere at very high temperature. For this reason, the Arctic pole was covered with a forest. And this is the period where you can find the ancestor of all the dog-like animals we know nowadays, the genus of Canis. The genus of Canis basically involves all the dog-like animals, so dogs, wolves, foxes, jackals, coyotes. But this is still not the wolf, he is the ancestor to all of them. To actually find the wolf, we need to take our time machine and go to 25,000 years ago. 25,000 years ago, from the Strait of Beringia, and if you want to know something about Beringia, I talk about it in one of my other videos, the wolves started to spread all over the world. From there, the evolution made extraordinary variety of wolves, such as the black Florida wolves, unfortunately now extincted, the red wolf, the Italian wolf, the Mexican wolf, the Arctic wolf. And this started during basically the big expansion of the genus Canis in the Pleistocene. Pleistocene comes from the ancient Greek pleistos kainos, which means most new. This is the Ice Age, but is also the age of the megafauna, of these huge animals that live the earth. Those animals have very difficult names that scientists give it to us to torture us. I honestly find very difficult to say them. I will say that it's easier to beat nitrous oxide in Crash Team Racing for PlayStation 1. For this reason, if you don't mind, I'm gonna use some simplified names to remind myself. And I might read this because it's very complicated. So the first one is the Indricotherium. The Indricotherium, it's way easily remembered as an elephant boar, because it's a big elephant with the face of a boar. This was one of the biggest one. He weighed 20 tons and he was 7 meters long and 5 meters high. He was incredibly huge. The other one, I think, is the Diprotodon, which I called a Guinea bear, because it looks like a bear with the face of a Guinea pig, or in general is a giant wombat. This was famous to be the largest marsupial that ever lived in Australia. After that we have the Vonambi naracortensis. This one actually has a very interesting story, because it's known as the rainbow serpent, and this is an animal that comes from the oral tradition of the Aboriginal Australian tribes. So it means that the oral tradition comes from the past where this animal was actually alive, and the rainbow serpent in the mythology is actually, it could be this same animal. The rainbow serpent was, in the mythology, is the god of water and rain. And it's a huge serpent with the color of the rainbow. The other one is the Glyptodon, or way better, a giant armadillo. This was a giant armadillo living in South America. After that, we have an easy one. We have the woolly rhino. The woolly rhino, as the name says, is a rhinoceros with a wool fur to keep him warm in the Siberia where he was living. Two interesting facts about this animal is that we actually find an intact mummified individual that was basically frozen in the permafrost of Siberia. And the second fact is that there we can find in the caves paintings of our ancestors of this animal, because obviously our ancestors were hunting this animal. Another one doesn't need any description is the mammoth. The mammoth is one of the most iconic animals of the Ice Age. One interesting fact that you might not know is that the last one died only 4,000 years ago in an island in the north of America north of Russia, the Wrangel Island. This was the period of the Sumerian Empire. When the Sumerian Empire was growing up, the last mammoth was dying. Finally, the last one is a giant lizard called Megalania. This one is also present in the mythology of the Aboriginal Australian, known as Wowie, a very fearsome animal with the face of a frog and a body of a lizard, 7 meters long with 6 legs. Very scary. You might wonder why all these animals died. Well, one reason is to find in the spreading of another species during this period. During the Pleistocene, the genus Homo started to spread around the world. And as you might know, we are one of the most one of the best hunters in the world. We find strategies to hunt those animals and basically hunt all of them to extinction. But it's not only because of Homo, the Homo erectus that and all the others, genus Homo, that those animals got extincted. There was a pressure from the climate change and another particular change that happened during this period. In this period, there was the creation of the Isthmus of Panama. So, 15 million years ago, in Panama, there was only ocean. 50 million years ago, the Caribbean plate started to slide under the Pacific plate. If you don't know what a plate is, you can imagine that our Earth is like made by pieces of, like a puzzle of Earth that are connected into each other, and at the point of contact between them there is a high seismic activity, like creation of earthquakes and volcanoes. So one of these two plates making this the planet were basically sliding one on top of the other, creating a volcanic island. After a lot of years, so if you go to 3 million years ago, the isthmus was formed by the ocean bringing material from the two Americas, creating the isthmus. The isthmus is basically a small piece of land connecting two big pieces of land. The consequences of this are huge. So the first one was the separation of the Pacific Ocean with the Atlantic Ocean, and with different features. The Atlantic Ocean became with a higher level of salinity, mainly because it rains less, or the separation of the biodiversity between the two oceans. But also the creation of the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream is a stream that goes from the Gulf of Mexico going up to Europe, making Europe 10 degrees warmer during winter. But one of the most impactful feature of the isthmus was the connection between the two Americas. The connection between the two Americas basically made all the living species moving from one America to the other. This was a huge disaster because there is a relationship that is called the species-area relationship. This rule says that an island can allow a certain amount of species, and increasing the area doesn't increase the amount of species linearly. The meaning of this is that if you have an island that allows 100 species, and you have another isolated island that allows another 100 species, if you somehow connect them, like such as this case, you are not going to have 200 species. You're going to have a capacity that is less, because the amount of species increases less than not proportionally with the area. For this reason, when the two Americas were connected, a lot of species got a big pressure for extinction. This is one of the most impactful effects on the extinction of those animals, in my opinion. You might wonder what changes could made the megafauna in the present with their presence in the world. There are many issue effects that I find out. One is I find out with my research on the web. One of them is that these big animals allow the spreading of resources in bigger areas. For example, in South America, those big animals were collecting resources around the Amazon River and spreading them, making the basin river much larger and much bigger, with the secondary effect of making pressure on the vegetation that couldn't grow aggressively, making basically an area similar to what we have in Africa with the savanna. And because obviously in the savanna we still have big animals. So we had the similar effect of a big savanna and a wider area with rich vegetation. The second effect was in the tundra, where the big animals like the mammoth and the rhinoceros were basically altering the soil with their movements, and were also spreading resources all around the tundra. And there is hypothesis that the tundra at that time was a much greener and had much more vegetation than nowadays. Unfortunately, we are not able to see anymore this effect because mainly the humans extended all of them. We are now getting at the end of our stroll. At the end, I want to get again our time machine, and this time I want to go in the future. And I want to go in the Wild West. This time, what I expect to see is something much more similar to the environment in Red Dead Redemption 2. An environment with the nature more restored to the original state. An environment where humans don't put themselves at the center of the world, where there is a shift from anthropocentrism to ecocentrism, where human living and non-human living are considered to have the same importance, the same value. We saw in this video how we have the power to remove the apex predator, and we have the power to put it back. We saw also how we could kill basically an extraordinary species like all the megafauna. We know we are a unique species that are able to think about ethical consequences. But the fact that we have the power doesn't mean that we have the right to manipulate the world. That's what we need to learn. I want to conclude this video by talking about the word ecology. Ecology derives from Greek. Eco means home, house. Ology means study, so study of house. So what I want to say is I want to put eco in the center. I want to put in the house in the center, the life in the center. So life first, house first.